arguably something less than $1 billion, despite the fact there might be 9 guys in their basement that whip something up and never actually made a dime of revenue. That's that end of the spectrum. Entrepreneurs really like that end of the spectrum. And in the middle, you have other strategic buyers that say, I've got a hole in my product line. I'm already entrenched a bunch of customers, and I easily have these channels. If I add these few extra products, I know that I can even though the little company I'm buying hasn't been able to penetrate these markets, I know that with my channels, I can take that product and distribute it and make quite a bit more money than the little company can make on their own. So we'll split the difference. I'll give them something in the middle so that I'm making a lot of money because I know I can sell more, and they're going to certainly get a lot more from the company than they could ever get because they can't penetrate the markets. So there's 3. I'll give you a 4th one, which is just replacement cost. Replacement cost is a pretty good one also, I think. If you show up at a company like Microsoft or Oracle or Google and say, look, I have this thing. I know you need this thing. I made it already, okay? You know how much it costs your internal guys to make something like this. How much would you pay to just buy the thing off the shelf finished, be able to write off the transaction as a depreciable asset, because there's a lot of tax advantages to acquiring a company as opposed to running internal R&D on a project. And also there's the time value. You're not going to be to market for 2, 3, 4 years while your competitors catch up. So it's replacement cost. If you pay me right now double what it might cost you to make the thing internally, is that fair? And I think a lot of acquirers would say yes. There's 4 valuation methodologies. And really when you get to the table, your buyer and seller get to the table, it's the seller's job to describe the strategic value of this end of the spectrum and how it's going to cost the buyer dearly in the marketplace if they don't have this unique thing, and the buyer comes to the table with, well, you're making X amount of money, so I'm just going to wring you dry for you. So you're only worth the cash flow you produce. And a lot of M&A advisors will do all of these, and they'll produce an average or produce a report that says, well, here's the 4 methodologies we used, and here's the low one, here's the high one. So let's start negotiating. And really, when it comes down to it, it's just whatever a buyer and seller feel comfortable negotiating.
So how do you go about choosing your buyers?
Choosing your buyers. That's a great question. A very good question. And it's something that we asked ourselves quite a bit. There's a lot of factors involved. And it really does depend on who the seller is, too. Here you have 2 entrepreneurs that started a company in their basement in a new area of technology, really created a foothold in the industry, a name for the company, the products, technology, and had a staff of very, very loyal employees behind them. That's very, very different from somebody who buys a business, doesn't ever work there, is an arm's length owner, and just wants to fix it up, make it run a little better, get the profits up, and turn around and flip the thing. That's purely a financial transaction. Whereas there's a ton of other factors on the part of entrepreneurs. There's what's the likelihood that these guys that buy this company are going to destroy it? Despite the fact they might be the highest payer, I don't want them to kill my baby. I spent 16 years of my life building this thing. I don't want to somebody I'm going to spend 9 minutes destroying it. That's one. Loyalty, personal loyalty to people around you. I have a lot of friends at Mops will do, will always, and they appreciate the fact that they didn't sell to somebody who would make all of our lives miserable. I made a lot of money. I could walk away. They can't. So there's a lot of personal loyalty involved. Also, when you sell a company, there is some pride in having the thing continue on, grow up, become something great, despite the fact that when I sold the company, I was owned close to half of it. Despite the fact that I don't own close to half of it anymore, it would still be nice to see the thing explode into a humongous company at some later date, just for ego and pride and whatnot. There's a guy in Boston lives around the corner from me, a guy named Bob Metcalf. He invented Ethernet. He started the company 3Com, another MIT guy. Anyway, I think he sold 3Com a little bit early, and he spent spent most of the money on this townhouse that we lived in my neighborhood. But nobody would deny that the guy's not world famous for inventing Ethernet and starting 3Com. And there's a lot of other benefits he garnered besides just the cash for building some 3Com. So selecting the buyers is very personal. It's a very personal matter. And I'll be honest, ST wasn't, they weren't our first choice, they were our second choice. Our first choice was a company called Flight Safety International, if you're familiar with them, and they were owned by Berkshire Hathaway. Now, they actually did have the highest bid, they did have the highest price, but to me personally, I would have been, my boss worked, if Flight Safety had bought, my boss would have worked directly for Warren Buffett. So I would have been, one level away from Warren Buffett. And that to me was worth a couple of $1 million. If they had not been the number one payer, if they'd been 2 or 3, I still would have gone with them simply because of the possibilities and the cachet of working for Warren Buffett. It turns out right at the end they backed out of the deal because they got cold feet. And ST was number 2 on the list. And I have to say I'm not unhappy at all about the way it worked out with ST. They really they understood the culture of the small business. They understood to leave it alone. They were legally obligated to leave it alone to some extent through the SSA. But I do also think that they're much better at acquiring companies than other companies. A lot of companies really do just buy the company and destroy it, whether it's ego or confidence or control or whatever. But that didn't happen though. So I'm pretty pleased. Pretty pleased with the way it turned out. And that's a rarity. It's actually a rarity.
You already talked about how to select the buyers, but how to find them right now, because a lot of people right now don't have cash. So who should form the strategic alliances? What are the recommendations?
Another great question. We first started exploring selling the company in 2002 or something like that, several years before we actually sold it. And at first we did the standard investor book that we put together this 50, 100-page document that has the nice hockey stick. So here we are now, and 5 minutes after you buy it, this is what happens. Okay, so everybody has the old hockey stick graphs in their book, and here's why page after page describing why if you don't buy this company, you're an idiot. Your company's going to go out of business, and you must buy it. It's obviously the only way of the future. So we did that, and I felt a little dirty even writing the book. But this is felt kind of slimy. And our M&A advisor did the classic technique of mail out a couple of hundred letters to this spreadsheet full of companies and start taking meetings. And don't mention the name of the company. Ooh, it's a big secret. We've got this hot little company that nobody knows about except for you and 199 of your other competitors. And then you whittle it down, and then you have the meetings. So we went through that whole process. That's a pretty standard, classic process. Okay, the standard auction process. And in good times, and if you have a good property, that can do pretty well. It can do pretty well. But it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work on the part of the company, because now you're being distracted from actually running and building your company. I have a lot of friends who are entrepreneurs as well as CEOs, and I observed that there's 2 kinds of entrepreneurs. One that spends all their time and effort selling pieces of their company to investors, okay? Or another kind that invests all their time and effort in actually building product and selling product to their customers, okay? You can't, a friend of mine had a great saying, you can do anything, but you can't do everything, okay? So you have to pick where you focus your attention. Take the entrepreneur out of the role of building product and building things for your customers and focusing on the marketplace, and putting them in charge of an M&A activity, which is a full-time job for the entrepreneur, can really wreak havoc with a small company that might be fledgling. Okay, if you're on the borderline, you're cutting deals with customers, you're not giving away chunks of equity, but you're getting money for product. It's so much better than giving away chunks of equity and perhaps getting money for your equity. So the best way, this is going to sound stupid, but the best way to find the buyers that want to call you is wait around and do really, really good work for your customers and become something hot